So if, you know, and I'll drive this back home to energy, but, you know, right now it's in healthcare. If you're someone in healthcare and you're into informatics or you're an analyst of any kind, you can leverage AI tools. If you're in any form of any business vertical, there's no reason why you cannot leverage today AI tools that are effective in your business. Now, when it comes to the industrial space, industrial automation, manufacturers have latched on to AI probably a little bit quicker in terms of use for larger companies, maybe not the smaller. You know, in terms of manufacturing, it's definitely you're seeing an increase in life science. You are seeing the increase in some businesses, specifically credit cards, anywhere that you have a financial tech is one. And the reason why I think that they do that and not what I call oil and gas is just because the margin is smaller, so they have to be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're almost forced to want to leverage these kind of tools. It doesn't mean that they're saturated by any means. It just means that they have to find a way to reduce that. I think in oil and gas, let's pick on energy for a second here. In terms of energy, in terms of AI, there's some blockers to it. And one of the reasons I think is it's one of the last vestige industries where if I wildcat drill a well and I have a team of cowboys working with me, I can still make money.
Yeah.
Okay. And so,
and guys can come into this industry and make well over 6 figures with a high school
sure,
GED even, right?
And I know no one wants to say that, but if you're delivering crude, natural gas, NGLs, and you can buck the system in terms of technologies and still make money, then there's no advantage to leveraging technology that way.
Well, I think it's also like the way these things get developed in the oil and gas space. If we just look at even like the majors, they go in there and you know, they don't go sit in the field for 40 years unless they're in the guar field, you know, across seas. But, you know, they go in there and it's typically 5-year life cycle for someone who's doing like big, large shale oil development, et cetera. And even if it doesn't end at 5 years, it's not the same pace as it was because they're on to the next thing. At least that's what we've seen over the last 20 years during shale revolution. But I think the problem was even going back to, you know, some of the premier operators who have their data in order, have nice, huge data lakes and all that. Most of them don't. And most of it, the data is disparate. The facilities are not like for like, kind for kind. They, you know, they all look a little bit different. They may have a different flavor of PLCs out there, you know. And so it's difficult to say, hey, we want to start with this, because to start with it, you really need a data set that is somewhat scrubbed. And, you know, you can even use AI to help you do that.
Sure.
But there are things you need to do to prepare. You can't just throw in your spreadsheet that's unformatted and, you know, it's looking and it wants to know what row, what column, like all
Sure.
those sort of things, just like a robot would. Like,
well, it's getting back to context, right?
Yeah.
So you know, Jeff, you're I think we're both leaning on the fact that there's lots of one-off, unstructured wildcat activity that happens in oil and gas that it's just very prevalent today. So I think that's one what I call a blocker. The second blocker is the generational gap. Okay, and you and I have talked about this multiple times. There is a generational gap in this industry, and you know, from a 3 different studies, both all 3 done in 22 and 23. Indicates that the average, what we're going to call the oil field worker, is in the late 40s, early 50s. So I'm 51, and I think I'm an anomaly in terms of technology.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah, so I think we're anomalies to this.
But we're in technology, so that might explain a part of that. But keep going.
But the end of, I think my point here is just that it is the adoption rate of AI or technologies might be a little bit smaller. And again, it doesn't have to do with age. It just has to do with the adoption of technologies, where what you're going to find is anyone younger than Gen X, a millennial, a Gen Z, they're coming into the workforce. And I think we're seeing a shift over time of this change, but it still remains a blocker in the industry.
Yeah, and so you said that 50% of the oil and gas workforce is 50 years or
about
older.
48%. About 48% is at least in their late 40s, early 50s.
And I would assume, just based on my experience, that the younger crowds that are part of the oil and gas industry are not, decision makers with a budget. That's a lot of times that's your field guys. I mean, it's some of these places we work, it's very tough. It's hot. It's dry. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
A lot of times in the field, you find young men, age 20 to 30, and that's watering down that pool. So what you find in the office is guys that are, older Gen X guys. So they're probably in the late 50s time frame. And so we're up against an issue in industry with one, how do you attract the next generation of folks to come in here, especially with, the way the media and things like that view oil and gas production. So do we have enough folks coming in? But the folks that do come in, they're very open to these sort of technologies. And in fact, if they come into an organization that doesn't have the technologies that they're used to growing up with, as they're scrolling on their tablet at 3 years old, and they go into the workforce at 24 and they get kind of disenfranchised because it's like, man, I had all these things and now I'm going to work for this oil and gas company and they don't have anything. Like they don't have beautiful HMIs. I don't have a way to do my job. There's no productivity tools. I'm opening up a spreadsheet. And I can tell you this, I have a kid that's 19, 20 years old going to college. Like, she didn't open up a spreadsheet her entire time so far through high school and college, right? Like, that's kind of crazy to me, but it's because they have other tools that they use now. Everything's digital on the campus. They have different, Canvas. They have different types of applications that kind of organize their entire life, right? You don't even buy books anymore, right? It's all digital online. But those people, when they enter the workforce, expect to have productivity tools at their fingertips to do their job. And if they don't, they're not going to work for you for long.
Right.
And if oil and gas is lagging that much, and again, it could be potentially because of the generational gap, and it seems very wide in this industry compared to many others. That's kind of the laggard as far as adoption of these new technologies. And if you're someone who's 55, 58, late into your career, and you're high up on the food chain at whatever E&P company, you're probably not saying, hey, man, I want to revolutionize how we do business right before I retire.
No,
right?
You're used to looking at those spreadsheets.
Right.
That's how you consume your data.
Yeah, and honestly, it may be easier for them. It may be less hassle, and they may not want to learn these new things, but they should empower their workforce to do that for them if that's their approach. But if not, they're missing out, and it's the managers, decision makers that embrace these things. And that are going to uncover the nuggets, so to speak, like Todd mentioned. Golden nuggets. It may not be one huge gold bar that you find, but a bunch of little bitty ones.
Thousands
and they
of them
add
in
up.
the data. Thousands.
Yeah. So in oil and gas, here's another study from McKinsey. The average age of a leader, not a digital leader, sorry, but a leader in oil and gas is 58 years old to 62.
Wow.
Okay. So
makes you look young.
Yeah. So this was a study done in 2023. Okay. So a McKinsey study. Now, and this is the United States, oil and gas.
Right.
Okay. Now, the third blocker, we talked about the first two. This third blocker is leadership. It is the adoption by leaders to want to create digital transformation in their organization. And part of that transformation is the leveraging of AI. It just is. So, and I think we saw this firsthand. The three of us worked, they're still, they're a midstream company. And you saw the leadership that was, in that same age group. But there was a there was a need for digital transformation, but it had to be adopted at the leadership level, and that was difficult.
Yep.
Okay. And it was difficult because that group would not take on a digital transformation mindset, which is simple. You want to leverage data to tell you about and everyone you want it to give you information in real time and everyone needs to know what's happening in the business in real time.
Yep.
That's part of transformation. And I think when you combine that with leveraging AI, they didn't want to do it. I think the three of us were involved in deploying Ignition and leveraging other tools out there with this company. But what we saw was a leadership that just did not want to be adopters of specific digital or transformations.
Well, yeah, and culturally there. So, let's say in that organization, we were one of the 12% using these tools. You can imagine if you had a peer group and you're, let's say you're a superintendent, manager.
That might be a good analogy for a lot of the industry anyway. Roughly maybe 12% of people or adoption of technology is probably feels like about right in terms of
but you got to, like in that case specifically, what you got to look at is if you're a vice president, you got a peer group of vice presidents, or you're a manager and you got a peer group of managers, superintendent, whatever. Like if you're one of those 12% who is embracing the technology, developing these agents, doing all these things, you're running circles around your peer group. Right. Like you look like 3 people to your boss, maybe 4, maybe 5, who knows how many more.
Right.
And then when you come into the Friday meeting and you're, you just produced a deck in 5 minutes that's beautiful and is 20 slides and goes over all the other stuff you did for the week, like you've got a competitive advantage against your peers. And culturally, if that's not something that leadership is pushing to embrace these things, like eventually your peers are going to kind of throw you under the bus, and they're going to say, no, we don't embrace this. And if your AFE, your project, your budget, if it requires all these folks to kind of be involved or sign off, and you don't have the big stick to say we're doing this, it can be really tough to sell with all those other blockers that you mentioned, which are all, to me, part of the culture too. And the reason it's part of culture is because at leadership level, leadership has to look at who we're going to hire. Look at Elon Musk. Who did he hire for Doge? Bunch of 68-year-old dudes? No, it's like kids, like literally 18, 19-year-old kids who know how to use these tools.
Right.
And what are they doing? I mean, really quickly, they're able to go out there and do what would take years to do. In fact, we talked about it this morning, what they're doing was not even possible 3 years ago. Right. And without this technology, this country might have been bankrupt 10 years from now. Who knows? But that wasn't even something that you could do. And he brought in 40 folks to do something like that to tackle how many trillions of dollars? You know what I mean? Like, scale that compared to what your little business is doing, even if it's a big business and it's $50 billion business, but most of them aren't. We're talking small companies, $2, $3 billion, maybe less.
So regardless of where you fall politically, at the end of the day, you're leveraging technology and the power of AI to look at siloed organizations in one government.
Right.
Now, take that same principle and apply it to what you just said. Leverage the power of AI in your disparate plant facilities at one organization.
Yeah. And again, aside from how you lean politically, that's not the reason for but regardless, what's coming out of the U.S. government is you see a lot of waste. We can call some things fraud. I'm not going to go there because I don't want to start a big old shit show here, but you got waste, you got things you didn't know were happening, you got money going out the door that shouldn't be. Or that you don't intend to be, right? Well, the same thing happens at every business.
Right.
And maybe it's not at the scale of, hey, you wasted $50 billion on this in this country. But ultimately, it could be 50,000 that you're wasting. And those little nuggets, they add up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and innovation is ultimately going to drive change. Always has. And I think one of us, or one of you two made the point earlier, if you're not getting on board with this, your peers that do are going to kind of leave you behind, and eventually they'll get on board. Yeah, but you're going to be hurting in the meantime.
So if you're one of those people that is a generalist or wants to be a generalist, and you're in an organization and you're trying to affect change with innovation, how do these guys get started with that? Like, you want to do this, you're up against these things. Like, you got to have a change agent, right? So you got to have a plan around how to attack that change. And what I've found is, hey, we want to do this. We've got a business case. We've got a proof of concept we want to do, whatever. And we've run the slide deck. We've gone to the VPs. Here's what it's going to cost to do this. Here's what the expected output is and how it'll impact the organization, right?
Right.
you also need a robust plan in most organizations, especially if they're culturally challenged in this regard, to say, here's the step-by-step change.
Right.
Here's who it'll impact. You know, and it could be part of your business plan or your POC that, it's going to impact this department, and guess what? We're not going to need them 12 months from now.
Right.
Right? But how do you need a plan on how to, demob that department if they're going away, right? And I think that's where probably a lot of people might fail, is they don't think about how tough change can be, especially at a large scale, culturally, how it'll be accepted, and they don't plan enough around being a change agent or a manager of change or managing a process similar to the way we do in PSM, FIMS of the whole nine. You have to manage this process of change, right?
Right.
To have any kind of success.
Right. So let's speak to two different people. All right. Especially in the energy space. The first one is the knowledge worker. If you're in a department, and I'll name a few: operations, measurement, supply chain, accounting, corporate, HR. Then you've got subgroups that fall into that. So you might have, I'll give you another one, could be like where you've got financial, invoicing, accounting, right? I think I talked about that group. And so if you're looking for tools, they're available. If you're wanting to be an AI generalist, you can start by not just deploying a large language model. There's simple tools like make.com. There's N8N. You want to give yourself a superpower. Those are some easy tools to start with, because you can load them up and you can support them in your own ecosystem, and you can develop easy tools to do that. Microsoft has their own set of tools that are built into Fabric and built into the Power Platform for automating. If you're not just automating, but you want to leverage AI, you can do that as well and plug in a model to do that. So I want to speak to, if I'm speaking to that group right there, those are easy, low-hanging fruit wins. You can go in and optimize your invoicing scenario. Sometimes all you're trying to do is reduce the amount of time it takes to see bill versus actual.
Mm-hmm.
You can shorten that time by using tools like N8N or make.com for invoicing. If you're trying to, take a person and optimize their use and their capabilities at different plant levels in operations, you can do that as well for ticketing, for balancing, for all those things. You can do that at that level using the same tools. Marketing is another one. You can do the same thing. So there are plenty of tools to use that are out there. I'll put a plug in here. Drop a comment. I'd be happy to share some more of those tools. In fact, Jeff, in post, I'll make a link available to some of those tools. We can do that. Now I want to address the second group. The second group is the manager, director, and leader. And this could be anyone that's the manager of operations, production, automation, SCADA, plant operations,
project managers
within the PMO, or I'm specific to compressors. I'm an automation tech. I'm this type of person that works in operations or at the plant level, on the pipeline, in the field. If you're a leader in that and you want to leverage AI, I'm going to give you a few steps and things that you can take. Okay, so number one, if you're going to do this, number one is you need to define the value. Okay, because you have a project right now that's probably worth has a budget of $50,000, and all you want to do is try something, or you have something that's maybe bigger than that sitting in an AFE or an OPEX budget. You can do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is determine the value. That means create the proposition. What is it? What am I trying to do here? The second step that you're going to do is you're going to establish a prediction goal. What do I mean by that? I mean, what can I do to optimize my production at the well level? That's actually creating or establishing a production goal or an actual prediction goal. What does it take for me to deliver my gas to the market sooner? What does it take for me to reduce my downtime? Right? So those are prediction goals. You can try to achieve those. Next, if you're going to do that, the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to establish an evaluation metric. There's a saying I have, and that is, you can't manage what you don't measure. Okay, so you need to establish your evaluation metric and be realistic. I think in oil and gas, one thing I've learned is you can't lie to the foreman in the field, right? You can't. So you're going to want to establish your evaluation metric and call a no bullshit number and say, is this achievable or not? Okay. The next thing that you're going to want to do after you do this is prepare your data. Once you understand that you have to prepare the data, you're going to realize my SCADA system sucks. Okay?
If you're on XYZ SCADA system,
sure.
right?
If you're in a paywall platform that I won't mention here, there's quite a few.
Go ahead and mention them. Let's talk about them. What are we talking about,
We're
Mike?
talking about Wonderware. We're talking about Plant Packs.
Delta V, Honeywell
DCS platforms.
All right, there we go.
These are paywall products that want you to pay something up front before you can realize a competitive advantage.
And the learning curve there, Todd. Todd's someone who's developed in pretty much all of these. Like,
yeah.
Compared to your Ignition is your platform of choice, but like, what are we talking about? Learning curve, cost. You know, I know people who have a Wonderware bill north of $500,000 a year for small systems. You know what I mean? Not thousands and thousands of wells either. So.
And comparatively, that could be a $30,000 perpetual license in the Ignition
with
product.
like $3 to $4 grand of maintenance a year.
So think about
Literally
that.
Nothing.
Think about that. After
you could be spending that money on your automation and your AI specialist, as opposed to paying a licensing fee. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And here you are. You've determined a value. You've said, I want no BS on this. I want to establish, my prediction. I want to establish my evaluation metric. I want to prepare the data. I'm realizing that I can't even do that because my system sucks. Okay. So there's methodologies to get that ready. And what I mean by that is you might have a paywall system already stood up. Believe it or not, you can stand up a product like Ignition right next to it with an easy OPC-UA or MQTT broker connection with an edge device and immediately collect data within a few hours and start making decisions, okay, and start collecting data. Now, there's definitely some work. So I'm not saying that this is a pop it in the microwave and here you go. What I am saying is that your time to value is a lot shorter when you get rid of these paywall products, okay?
And I'd even say the overall value because, the education courses there and some of those products are free as well.
Yeah.
So licensed by server. Also, you're going to have free education. You're going to get free. There's pay options if you want to go more advanced, but out of the box, that's easy enough to do.
So the data sucks.
Yeah, so data sucks.
You may have to fix that.
You may have to fix that. You have to prepare the data, okay? So there is a preparation period to do this. I'm not saying that that's easy, but hey, if look at me, if I want to go and look like someone on the cover of Men's Health, it's going to be painful.
And this is one of the biggest roadblocks in industry is swallowing that pill that you got to go back and maybe it's not a decade worth of data, but even a year could be tough. And do you have good historical data? Two, if not, how do you start to have historical data and how do you scrub it? And to me, that is probably the hardest piece is getting your data organized, contextualized, and ready for these models.
The data has to be modeled, the data itself.
And not just that. Here's the one thing: your data does have to be structured so that it's contextualized properly. I think and from the Opsite perspective, in terms of the team depth and experience, we know what it's like to be at the PLC level and have crappy data and be able to make sense of it and organize that and move quickly to define some UDTs or some structures that give you contextualized data at the end of this. So I gave you some steps. Now you're at to prepare the data. The final methods are pretty much you're going to want to train a model, which is machine learning 101, all right? Those are basic things you can do. And guess what? Because you deploy a simple machine learning model, you are now on your way, that you're now inside the scope of AI. And the final thing is you're going to deploy your model. And then once you deploy it, you're going to learn from it. And I know that I put it in about 7 or 8 steps, but the reality is that you can go through these steps in your operation of being the AI generalist and saying, I can do this and execute it. I've had the privilege of working for a water wastewater company that uses legacy systems, and to this day, they still cannot grasp or put their hands around their own data. Okay. But I've also had the experience of working at some Fortune 500s where the mindset was, we have to create a better way to improve our data and give us a competitive advantage, even though we think we're pretty good at it. So I've seen the both and the in between, and so I think those are the steps I gave you. If you want to become the simple AI generalist, you can do it. You can start. It's not difficult.
Where do people learn this stuff, Mike? Where do you go look? I mean, I'm assuming a lot of it's just like YouTube and things, but where are you getting your education on these things?
Well, I think for me, I did some formal training through both AWS and the Azure environments and the platforms. So I did that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you go pay $3,000 for a boot camp. I'm not going to say go do that. I did go back to school and focus on technology. But I would say right now, if you want to be just a simple AI generalist, I would start with a couple of links I'm going to post in the chat in our YouTube channel. They're going to take you to training methods for N8N and make.com. Both of them will be links to some school. There's a couple of folks you can follow. One of them is Helena Liu. That's Helena, L-I-U, Helena Liu. She's a great follower. There's Liam Ottley, Liam Ottley is another great place to go visit for looking at AI tools and start leveraging them today. Yeah, you can go to YouTube. I would focus on two production products, which are N8N, make.com. Grab yourself a simple large language model. There are some free ones you can push. You can start with a free model. Eventually, some of them are $20 a month. You can follow a few groups in order to grab some really good prompt engineering. There are some programs you can take that offer just prompt engineering. One of them, of course, is Coursera. The other is Udemy. And they just offer simple ways for you to do some prompt engineering and then focus on a cloud platform of choice. You have your hyperscalers, which are GCP, which is Google Cloud, AWS, Azure. And my advice is if you are a SCADA person, you need to begin the Ignition's inductive automations, their university. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can sign up. Inductive automation inside of Ignition has the ML Manager for Machine Learning Manager. My recommendation is start with that product. It's free. You can download the software and run just about any application for free, and then you can just continue to renew the license till you're ready to purchase and use it at your plant. So,
yeah, and this is Todd again back here from the booth. If we're handing out opinions, I'm with industrial data management, we from an owner's perspective, if you're not jumping on AI as an automation specialist or what's that other degree that's elusive out there? It doesn't really matter what your degree is. You should be jumping on AI. But if you're in industrial automation, if you're in computer science is a big one. That used to be a huge drive over the past 8 to 10 years. Go get your computer science degree. That's going to be the technology. Yeah. You need to get into AI generalist because that computer science degree, that automation degree, all that is not going to be as valuable if you're not an AI generalist today.
Right.
Already today.
Yeah. The time to start was yesterday.
Right.
I think when it comes to AI tools and being a generalist, and take it from Todd and I, who've been on the controls side, industrial engineering, automation.
It is evolving faster than it ever has. And I've been in the business now 31 years, and I'd say in the past 2 years, it's evolved more than the past 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Jeff, just to kind of come back, kind of revisit what we talked about here again, the idea is there are lots of productive tools out there. You can aim to be the AI generalist or become an AI leader in your organization. And there are some steps to do that. I named off about 8 steps. Actually, those steps are outlined in a book by Eric Siegel called The AI Playbook. We'll post a link. If you reach out to us here at Opsite Energy, drop a comment, schedule an appointment with us, maybe to talk about your proof of concept or an opportunity. We'd love to help you, and I'd be happy to give you a copy of the book. And then we can talk about how you want to enhance, add some AI tools, and push for some digital transformation. So with that, This is Mike with the Energy Tech Podcast. I was glad to talk about this, and I want to keep going.
Yeah, Todd Smith here in the booth.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Jeff Perry. Appreciate everyone joining in today.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
Good job. Good job.